Hey, yo, what's going on, guys? Marvel Yap episode number 13 is here, baby. Let's freaking go. Today, we are going to be going over the cards from this past season, the Agent Venom season. We're going to be ranking them, talking about them statistically and with our own opinions, of course. We're going to be talking about tech cards. What makes a tech card? What are the best tech cards right now? And we're going to be going over the brand new season, the Surtur, Asgardian, War on the Nine Realms season, going over every single card that is coming out, giving our honest feedback on them, as well as ranking them ourselves. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. As always, we are joined with the hostess with the mostest, notmydance. How are we doing today, Dance?
Dude, I'm doing good. I'm excited. I feel like I came into the season expecting very little, and I'm coming out on the other end of it feeling a little differently, and I'm questioning. It's weird to say that I'm questioning all of the decisions I feel like Second Dinner has made with balancing, but I don't mean it even in a bad way. It's really cool. I'm really stoked about a lot of this stuff. We'll talk about that during today's Yap. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think like this season, like you said, felt a little interesting, a little weird, like a slow burn. I know some people got burnt out. I know some people have stayed through it. But today we are going to be talking about this past season, which is the Agent Venom season. We're going to be talking about tech cards. What makes a tech card? What are some of the best tech cards at the moment? And then we are also going to be doing a rundown of the new season that starts today as well, which is the Surtur, Asgardian, War on the Nine Realms season. But I am pumped.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun stuff. I'm excited about this in general, not just because of Red Bull, even though I'm addicted to caffeine. But that's besides the point entirely. I absolutely, I don't know. Even just talking about this card, right? I feel like this is a card that has, I think this is a really good card. And I feel like I've gone back and forth in this card a lot. But at this point, I don't know. What are your feelings on Agent Venom? We're at the end of his season. What are you thinking on him?
I think this card is a very good card. It really opened up the game to just a lot more mid-range kind of shenanigans and flexibility. And I think when you look at a season pass card, you want a card you can play in pretty much anything. And this is one of those cards that feels like you can fit into a majority of different decks. I do think this card does need to be tuned, but we do not have another OTA until the week after. This week, we have a patch in OTA the same week, and then the patch OTA schedule is kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that was just updated yesterday. We can talk about that, because I feel like I expected it to be one thing, and then it's been different entirely, and I don't know. I just don't know if anyone's really ready for the way it's gonna be changing up. Because also, up until this point, every single week that every single one of these that we've done has either been a reaction to the OTA, or it's been we just talk about what our predictions or hopes are for an upcoming OTA, and there's no point to do it here because we don't have anything coming up for a bit.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, because the 12th of this month we have the patch, and then we have an OTA the same exact week. Then we're not gonna have another patch or OTA until December 10th, where we have a patch, and then the 12th is an OTA.
A month, and it's been like that.
That's like a month.
The Thanos meta, which was last November, December, was when we also had this occur, and like people got tired of the meta. So I wonder if this patch OTA kind of need to be huge to be able to hold.
I'm
over.
hoping they are. Yeah, I kind of really want those patches and OTAs to be really large, because I feel like if they're not massive changes, I don't know. I don't know if the meta is going to be okay. I don't know if Snap as a whole is going to be okay with that.
Yep.
If that makes sense. Like, I want it to be good. I want everything to be enjoyable. I want to be able to have a lot of fun in this game. But with so long in between the changes, that's when the meta feels the worst. Even if they give us a bunch of broken cards, the meta can still feel rough, because so whenever a new card comes in the game, though, it's basically like a new content update. It basically adds something new to the game that wasn't there before. Even if you might look at Agony and disagree with that, it's still every single time a new card gets added to the game, it is technically a new bit of content. Whether or not that content is meaningful, impactful is a different conversation entirely. But I think that's part of the reason why I think the meta has felt so stale in the past, is that the content updates that we've had haven't impacted the meta a lot. And I think they've been really, with the last month in particular, I actually think they're really well balanced. I was going to come in here and say that they were all pretty much like undertuned, underpowered. But I kind of think the majority of the cards from last month last season, the Venom season, are okay.
Yeah, I think definitely looking at this season compared to September, like these cards definitely are more balanced. It's just what's running amok in the meta itself is what's unbalanced. Which is why some of these cards are not performing as well as other cards, because people aren't really wanting to maybe necessarily try new things, especially with these cards being more like archetype slot ins opposed to just brand new kind of stuff. Besides Agent Venom, you know, elevated, like we said, the mid-range decks and created a new kind of archetype, opposed to like what Scorn was discard, Agony, whatever. We're just gonna say whatever for that. Toxin,
Fair.
Bounce, Scream, Move, Disrupt, and then of course you have Anti-Venom, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But that card is very interesting. And then you have Misery. Misery also is very interesting. Those are the two cards that kind of were like flexible, but also at the same time felt a little funky and like you'd rather have something else instead. But it's going to be interesting, of course, going to this next season. But I didn't hate any of the cards this season. I didn't think any of them were like awful. I didn't think all of them were good, but it wasn't like Symbiote Spider-Man or like Scarlet Spider, which are just bad cards right now.
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean? Those definitely are not bad at all. At least according to the untapped stats, right? I will say Scarlet Spider is still atrocious. If he doesn't get hit in the OTA, I hate to tell you, Tuck, and I'm going to be the one to break the news, but Second Dinner hates Ben Reilly, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
Unless he gets an update, they hate him.
Or they just don't know how to do activate. That's the other thing, too, is like they're hoping maybe this next season, but...
Yeah, that's going to be... Because we've got 2 cards coming out this next season, and I really question where they're going to be in terms of how good or bad they are, because they're both very interesting. We'll talk about that at the end of this. But yeah, so Agent Venom, for what it's worth, and this is just, what is it? This is since the latest patch, and this is in the top 50% of Infinite. Just remove any Agatha bots and also remove just bots in general. He's got a 25% popularity rate and about just under 53% win rate with an average cube rate of 0.12. So it's... I know people are clamoring for this card to get nerfed. I don't want to see the most playable card that I don't even think is broken. I think it's a good card get nerfed from the season. I don't think it needs that. Am I crazy for that?
I think for what it does, I think if you don't nerf this card's ability, I think it's okay. I think I would maybe nerf his power a little bit. I think his ability is what you're mainly liking more than just what he does himself. So I think that's my argument there. And of course, you can make the argument for Airsham in that sense too, but Airsham's a whole different can of worms. That we're
not talking about our changes that we want to do today. To cards. But yeah, so I mean, he's doing well. I will say, he is not the most popular card currently. It's Shadow King after especially the most recent buff. Shadow King's at a 30% play rate.
I think
Shang-Chi
that's just the highest. Like,
yeah, Shang-Chi's number 4 right now. It's Shadow King, Agent Venom, Nico fits in there at number 3, and then you've got Shang-Chi.
That's crazy, like, to think about too, because like Shadow King, of course, it makes sense with this week as well when it comes to anti-venom, value. But like this card was needing a nerf, they were saying. It had a lot of play rate and very top infinite, but they wanted it to be playable elsewhere. Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. The whole choice that they were making there with that, I don't know. I mean, they're succeeding with the change. Part of my logic, I'm wondering, is we're about to enter, I think, the season of Shang-Chi.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if after a few weeks of this season, are we still going to be clamoring for a change to Shadow King? Because I think Shang-Chi's stonks are actually going to go way down as soon as we really mess with the new cards this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like I don't get mad at Shadow King. Like I get Shadow King, I'm like, oh, well, they have Shadow King. I can see like the opinion of like I don't want it to affect through Luke Cage. Like I can totally see that's probably the point. That's a little bit more OP is what people may say, that it can just go through anything to reset whatever, because it's just an end all be all and it's a 2 cost. But I think, like you said, like I think it's going to be Shadow King, Shang-Chi, Red Guardian, like a bunch of just tech cards, which is why we wanted to have the segment today about it too. That are just going to be all across everywhere. But enough talk about this season pass Agent Venom card. Let's talk about the card that came out the same week as Agent Venom. We have Scream. How do we feel about Scream?
Okay. I don't know. I think Scream is really good when you play it on turn 2.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, I don't think it's as good. That's one of the things I wish the Untapped tracker would do. Tell you the win rates of like a card when it's actually played. Like, is this when it's played? When it's drawn? Like, how early does it need to be played to be able to get this win? Like, I don't know if they can get those many stats inside of the card. I would love that, because I feel like Scream's a card that even now, first, she actually has, if I'm not mistaken, she has a higher win rate than Agent Venom.
Yep.
But only a 4.2% of the actual popularity. Again, these are all untapped stats, and a 0.15 in terms of average cube. So Scream is technically doing better than Agent Venom, but it's a lot narrower in its application. And I think the narrowness of the application of these cards is another interesting conversation to have, especially considering talking about like next month in general, because I feel like you said earlier, a lot of these cards that came out this month feel like they slot into archetypes. Scream goes inside of the anti-move list, and it probably is one of the only things that makes it legitimately playable. Toxin, was it Toxin or Scorn who came out next?
After Scream was Scorn.
Yeah, so then Scorn only fits in discard. Toxin only fits in bounce. Agony. And then we have Misery and Anti-Venom, which I really don't know if they if those two have as much of a deterministic place.
Which was Misery before Toxin.
It was Misery before Toxin?
I believe it was, or it was Scream. It may have been Scream, Misery, Scorn, Toxin. I forget the order, but I think Scorn came out. Yeah, Scorn came out the same week as Agony. So I think.
Oh, well, we could be told one way or another that what we're wrong or right about.
Yeah.
But in general, I feel like there's a lot. I feel like this season has had a lot of cards that are very narrow in their use cases, and they can only fit inside one place. And I wonder if that's part of the reason why the meta has felt staler.
Yep.
And it's also part of the reason why I think I'm excited about next month, because I feel like a lot of the cards we have coming out next month have a lot more diverse range in some of the places they can do. Other than the season pass card itself, I think a lot of the cards feel like they could be used in a lot of places, and I don't think that is clear for them. Is it going to be useful still? I don't know, but they are, I feel like, more spread out and not as narrow, and I like that. But that's future talk. That's the third topic that we're doing today. I don't know. In general, Scream I like. What are you thinking on Scream though?
I think Scream's a solid card. I think the archetype, like, it really didn't have a lot of legs to take off before Scream came out, and Scream really elevated that. And I really think also, like, when Toxin came out, Scream's stats were at like an all-time low, because bounce just hard counter is pretty much what you're trying to do here. So I think that really helped that die down a little bit. People are like, well, Toxin is a super hype card. It's really, really good in bounce, really, really good in bounce. And it's like, well, bounce is fun to play sometimes, but I have to use my brain a lot. So, like, I'm going to kind of stop playing it.
That's, I think, the biggest counter to bounce. We'll get Toxin is the next card. You're right. Misery is the next card. But yeah, I think that's the biggest counter to why I don't play bounce as much. I really enjoy it, but my brain hurt, and I don't want to keep doing it the whole time.
Yeah, it's a lot of thinking, a lot of smooth brain stuff. But like, I felt like this card was good, and I think like statistically it feels good. Like Dan said too, drawing it later, definitely you're not gonna have the same impact. But drawing this on 2 is almost pretty much a win con. Like, you don't even have to have Kingpin on the board. If you do have Kingpin on the board, you have that just extra level of just affliction. But like, what's interesting is like there's Luke Cage everywhere right now. Literally everywhere. But Scream still gets power even if Luke Cage is on the board. Your opponent's card just doesn't get afflicted, which is cool, like transactionally. Like, this card still gets the +2 whenever a card moves, which is solid. That's why, like, even into like those matchups, this card still has, you know, a higher win rate than Agent Venom. And of course, these statistics are based on if the card is played in that game to maybe win the game, maybe not, but it has to be played in the game opposed to just drawn. And then also sidebar, on snap.fan, I know you can track some of your statistics actually game to game if you can link your account to it. I don't know if it's specifically what the card does for you from game to game, but like I'm able to know what games, like how many games I've won when I've snapped turn 1, how many games I've won when I've snapped turn 2. And like it has those like statistics and stuff to be able to track on snap.fan. It's under your profile and you go to my stats, so you get to see all sorts of crazy stuff. Shameless plug for snap.fan.
Wow. Hey, fair enough. I'll take it. Yeah, fair plug. But yeah, then we got Misery. So Misery had to get buffed so quick.
Yes.
Right? They thankfully told us before she was out of the spotlights, I think. But she was originally a 4/7, quickly got buffed to a 4/8.
Yep.
Which is interesting. And I don't know if the stat change made that large of a difference. I can't say that because I don't have the pre-buff stats. But in general, what are your thoughts on Misery here?
I liked how it felt like it was something new. And I think that's what I really liked about the card itself. I wasn't really too high on the card. I was really high on the week for the card because it did come out with War Machine and Nomura, which was 2 other Series 5 cards, which were like looking at Spotlight weeks. If there's more than one Series 5 card, it's normally a good bye week, especially if you're missing just one of the cards. If you're missing all of them, it's 100% open week. But I felt like this was interesting. I liked how Jet made a Phoenix Force version of Misery, which was also very toxic. And like I faced it last night, and like it was. I
don't like that.
It is super annoying. Like it is super annoying. But it was cool just to see Phoenix Force somewhere else doing something different. I don't like playing against the deck at all. But it was cool just to see how this kind of enabled some Phoenix Force things.
Yeah, I think the tech with it was interesting. Again, not a fan of that deck as a whole, but it was interesting to at least mess with that, to see that being used as a piece of tech rather than anything else. But yeah, this is, for worth, out of every single card that we had released this month, including Agony, this is the worst in terms of, I guess, the tiers. I don't know exactly how Untapped does this stuff, but it is apparently doing the worst in general from when it's actually it has a negative 1, so 0.001 cube rate, which is basically even, 49.1% win rate, and then a 6.8% popularity. I don't know. I didn't mind this card. I don't think it was a bad card either. I think it was a very interesting ability to be able to mess with. I think it was very cool to try to figure out where is the actual best place for this card, be able to use it in some other places where I don't think you typically would think about it. In general, I think this card was, I think, the most interesting of this month, actually. Whether or not it's good is a different question, but I think it is the most interesting card from this month.
I think, in my opinion, most interesting is a 1A, 1B, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But like, I can totally see like, it's very interesting to see what combos people pull off, what tech they use. They use armor to protect their cards so they don't die, do you know? Or do they do like some weird Phoenix Force thing so they can literally just be toxic? But this felt like a good card. And then like after this, we had a very just typical plug and chug kind of card, and it felt great. What did you think about Scorn?
So Scorn was great for discard. I think Scorn is just a good card for discard in general. I liked it. It puts out the same amount of stats as Apocalypse does whenever Apocalypse is discarded, except it's kinder than Apocalypse, in which rather than Apocalypse stealing all that +4 for himself, Scorn will take +2 for herself and then give +2 to one of your other cards on the board, which is nice. I like that. I think it's a very cool card. I've had problems in games, and the only problem I'm saying here is trying to figure out what I'm playing Scorn versus Apocalypse on the board when I've got Dracula already. And I've made mistakes where I go through it and I'm looking at the after game. I'm like, you know what? If I play the Apocalypse down instead, Scorn is actually better value to let get discard again because it actually would put more value onto the whole board, which is a really cool bit of math to try to figure out, and I like that. But it's, yeah, I think Scorn's a very fun card. I think Scorn is definitely been great for discard. It is, what is it? It's got a 51.9% according to Untapped stats in terms of win rate, and then you've got 8.1 popularity percentage, and then a 0.08 cube rate. So in general, a good card. I like it. I've been having a good time with it, especially been trying to play more discard lately because for one, MODOK bundle got me, and for two, I've been annoyed with that Phoenix Force Black Widow deck. So I said, screw it. I'm going to discard my hand, so I don't care if you put that thing in my hand. It's going away anyway. I don't care about that. So I don't know. What have you been feeling about Scorn and otherwise, though?
So, like, I love Scorn. I think, like, before this card was even, like, data mined differently, like, with a different ability, I think this makes a lot of sense for what it does. If it did get the buff where, like, that extra power was also added to the board, it used to be, like, Scorn's power, it gets added to the board. That literally would have been busted. So, like, I'm glad they changed it the way it does, and it feels like a healthy card. I know a lot of people are upset with Scorn, and they're upset with Apocalypse, but they're mainly upset with Dracula. They don't like that Dracula absorbs the concurrent power opposed to the discarded power of, like, Apocalypse or Scorn, which I get is interesting. I could see the argument, but I don't think discard is really that oppressive and, like, something that needs to be tweaked in that sort of way. And I know people are mad about Gambit and stuff too, but, like, I think about, like, all these cards, and it's like these archetypes need to have ins and outs. They need to have cards that can, you know, afflict damage to your opponent's side of the board and that aren't just, you know, self-inflicting stuff. So I like the Gambit option. I like the Moon Knight option. And, like, this card just felt good. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't ridiculously broken. It just felt good. And it, like, we were talking about this before this card came out, and it's like, when Chavez left, discard. Not only did it really, you know, shorten, you know, your what you can, you know, draw. It didn't, you know, thin out your deck. So, like, you lost that with discard, so you would have the consistency. But you didn't have, like, another card like Apocalypse, really, that could get you some value for your Dracula. Now this gets value for your other cards, too. Yes, you had Swarms. Yes, you had Proxima, but it didn't feel the same. And I think Scorn really allows you to be able to, like Dan said, feel confident playing your Apocalypse now out onto the board because your opponent's thinking you're going to be keeping Apocalypse in hand. And you have that extra surprise factor because maybe it is a little BS, but I have to guess where this +2 power is going to go on the board now, and it might just lose me the game if Scorn gets discarded. But no, I think this is...
I feel like it's just as rough on your side, though, because there's plenty of times where I'm like, okay, listen, I've got 4 cards here, and I've got, like, 3 cards elsewhere. It's always gonna just go to the larger possibility, right? Right? And it doesn't. And so, I don't know. I don't think that there's an issue here with that.
No.
If you're gonna talk about a Dracula issue, this is an entire side point. I don't like the fact that Dracula gets the power of the modified card, but when Arnim Zola destroys Deadpool or Wolverine or was actually pretty much those two, he does it. The copies that go on the board are not the ones with the extra power in comparison to Dracula. It's technically slightly different wording between those two, but legitimately that's been my biggest issue with Marvel Snap for years. I think I hate that. You ever want to hear about my? That's actually, I forgot about that until you mentioned that a little bit right there. But that is the my only issue with Marvel Snap there. The fact that those work differently than everything else. That makes no sense to me, and I hate it.
I hadn't thought about that. That's actually a very, very interesting point. I know the interaction, but I hadn't thought about, well, if Dracula can do this, why can't Zola do that? So that is, it is really...
I don't know. I don't know why it does that, and I'm not going to pretend to like it, but we then had a card released. Yeah. Okay. This is, I don't know.
Agony. Woohoo! Merge with the next card you play here. Yeah, extra power. Good for Deadpool. You know, good for Shaw. Good for...
Yeah. Apparently its best place is Destroy and just being used. I think it's technically doing better than Hulkbuster did for that deck. So, I'm glad. Also, this is, I don't know. It was the first Series 4 release, like straight to Series 4 release we've had in a few months. So that's cool to see. Not to mention, obviously, high voltage as well. We can talk about that in a second as well. But
Could have been Series 3, though.
could have been. I still don't want them to put more cards in Series 3. Series 3 is too big.
Yeah.
We talked about that was last week's Yap. You all want to hear that? We talked about that for a while. But I think Agony as a whole is probably fine. It's technically doing better than Misery, according to the stats that they say with Untapped. Even though it makes no sense, because when I'm looking at this, I think it technically is saying it's worse. I don't know. So I'm not gonna go back and say the stats for Misery, but Agony is saying it has a 0.04, or sorry, so 0.04 in terms of cube rate, so negative. It's losing cubes typically. 47.9% win rate and a 5.1% play rate. I think it's saying it has the worst stats, but saying it's still better than Misery. I don't pretend the logic. I'm not gonna understand the logic here. I don't get it. I still don't think it's a good card, honestly.
Yeah,
still.
It's like yay, I'm glad I played high voltage and I got a free card. Like that's good. I'm glad you guys played high voltage. I'm glad you guys got the free card, and we like getting free cards and stuff, but I don't think this card is all that great. I get the argument though for it over Hulkbuster, or like you think of how good old Forge was when Forge was a 1-2. But the difference is like Forge, you didn't have to play on the same lane. This, you still have to play on the same lane. Hulkbuster, you have to have the card down originally. So it's very interesting to see how your ramp kind of interacts with this, or not ramp, but the way you're destroying things. I don't think it's like the worst card ever, but it's kind of just like, okay, stats on the board. We're playing Destroy. I think it's really good, especially for people that are earlier on in like Pool 3 or even later in Pool 3, maybe don't have all the Pool 4, Pool 5 cards. I think that's a good fit, but I think it's just a very meh card.
Yeah, it's interesting, by the way. I'm going to put stats, because I've got the stats here for both the Agony Deadpool Destroy deck and then the Hulkbuster Deadpool Destroy deck. It's the only one I'm going to talk about the difference between the two, because again, it feels like that's the place where people are going to talk about. I think the most Hulkbuster was most similar. Agony, the Agony version had a 48% win rate over 4,700 games, average cubes of just nil. and then the one with Hulkbuster had a average cube rate of 0.01, so technically had slightly less cube rate, very, very slightly. I know that really what matters a whole lot here. A win rate of 48.5%, so slightly higher win rate than over 3,900 games. So I don't know if that matters a lot, but I like the fact that it's not clear, I think, still which one is better. So even though I think it's an extremely forgettable card, a card that it maybe isn't the most interesting, I like the fact that it's being used.
It looks like it's getting play rate and it's like playable. It's just not gonna necessarily win you the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. But thankfully, after this week, we did have Toxin. It took me too long to realize, by the way, that Toxin is worded the exact same as Carnage, except it returns your other cards here to your hand. It took me way too long to realize that.
Because he's the son of Carnage.
Yes, exactly. He just doesn't destroy. He just brings them back instead. Because he's technically, like, I think he's good.
He's like an anti-hero or something. Yeah.
Everyone is, because everyone loves villains. Right, have to. I'm just saying. Problem with Hollywood. Different conversation entirely. Dude, so many villains are cool because they're bad. And then people are like, oh, you love this you love this? Well, guess what? Now they're villain with an asterisk because they're not as bad as this guy.
Yeah.
Like, what is it? We have Kraven coming out, don't we? I think next month, potentially, or something like that.
That movie is going to be a dumpster fire, but...
Okay, never. I actually won't say it. It's somewhat spoiled. I think they're doing like a Sinister Six.
Yeah, that without Spider-Man, by the way.
That's what I heard. Apparently, it might be without Spider-Man.
And they face Null or something. Like it's gonna be just.
And it's not gonna have any of the original members of the Sinister Six. Is potentially. I don't. Sometimes I look at what Sony's doing. I'm like, you're actively trying to just drive this straight into the dumpster at this point.
And there's an Agent Venom movie they're working on now too.
Are they working on an Agent Venom movie? Oh my god, dude! I used to watch the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show. Agent Venom was sick in that show. He was so cool. Loved him. I loved what they did with him there. God, I'm gonna be so upset with the movie. Anyway, Sorry, Toxin was really cool. I know I was distracted by other things that would typically incline that a card wasn't good, but Toxin was actually pretty solid for bounce. I think it was interesting because I think you didn't. Bounce became a lot more questionable.
Yes.
Which I actually really thought was cool because you typically had this default thing that you'd be doing where you're Beast, Falcon, and then insert your other cards here. But then it's like Beast, Falcon, Toxin, or Beast, Toxin, or Toxin, Falcon, and cats. Sorry, audio listeners, so you don't get to see that. But I think Toxin's cool. I liked him. He's 11.3% popularity, 52.4% win rate, and has the highest win rate out of, other than Age of Venom, of cards this season at a 0.09 Q rate as well. What were your thoughts on him?
I think this card is a good card. I think like what it does is very just like it goes in bounce. You're just, throwing stuff back. And I think like a reason why his cube rate and his win rate isn't super high is because like some people just can't play bounce. And like I mean that like not in a way like to be negative. It's just like there's a lot of lines you have to be like, if I bounce this here, if I look at my hand space, I look at my board space, when I want to play this, I want to do that. Like it's just trying to manage so many different things at the same time while you're just playing a normal game of Snap. You got 3 minutes, bro. You got 3 minutes to think through all of these options, and it is a lot. So like I totally get it, but like this card is good, and I think it does its job really well. You can even bounce your Toxin back to be able to get value. I'm not a very avid bounce player, so I didn't play this card maybe as much as other people, but like for what I've seen other people do with this card, like it does its job really well. And I think the shell bounce just changes all the time, just depending on what's relevant in the meta. So like you're really having to either flex out a bunch of options, put other things in. There's Iron Man in it now, I think, in one of the main shells. So it's just very interesting to see like what is happening with the state of Snap with bounce and stuff. But this card is going to be meta relevant, I think, for a while.
Yeah, I think I think this is my favorite card they added this season. Like, and it's not just because it's bounce. I just think it feels the most. I know Age of Venom's good, but you don't get. But it just kind of sits there, and you feel the slow burn over the entire game of the benefits of just having better powered cards. But with Toxin, whenever I use him, I love being able to feel like I'm getting immediate. It's just the immediate, I don't know, like serotonin, the happy juice your brain gives you, where it tells you like, hey, you've gotten good things here today. Like, I don't know, seeing a cat climb up on you, something like that. It just like gives you immediate serotonin. Yeah, Toxin's been a lot of fun. I feel like before bounce, I was doing somewhat decently there. I think since Toxin was added though, I'm running the timer down on every one of my turns that I'm playing him because I'm thinking through 19 different lines that I have here with all my different cards that I have with everything else. Absolutely fun.
Yeah, you literally have to think through everything, whereas this next card, you don't have to think through everything. You just are praying to RNGesus. What exactly is going to happen with Anti-Venom? Which, if you guys don't know what Anti-Venom does, is the card that came out this past week, which is set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0. So you have a 0 cost and a 0 powered card that you draw on the next turn.
And this is also using, what is it? It's also now doing stuff with, what is it called? It's got a buff, right? Because it was a 4/6 when we first saw it. And then just like a couple days before, it went to a 4/7. What are you feeling about this card?
I really like this card. I think this is up there with Scorn for me for my favorite card of the season, actually. And I think the unknown factor just really helps with like a lot of your snap conditions. Granted, I'm a very avid Pixie enjoyer, so like I love that aspect of RNG and the high rolls. And I think this really just gives you a lot of unknown. I like this especially in Conquest. And especially some of these Affliction Ajax lists, like Anti-Venom gets you some crazy value, which is why Shadow King we were talking about earlier has such a high play rate as well, because Shadow King can reset the power of the card you draw to what it was originally if you don't have Luke Cage. And then it's just incredible, I would say. I think with Frigga next week too, you might see some more Anti-Venom stuff there. But I think it's a good card. It's not the best card in the game or like the best card this season. It's my favorite, but I don't think it has the exact perfect shell like some of these other cards do right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually didn't know the stats for this, by the way, but apparently so the deck you're talking about, I think the Pixie deck that's been going around with Agent or with Anti-Venom.
Mhm.
It's got Goliath and Magneto and stuff in there as well. That's apparently the best deck with the Anti-Venom, and it's got a 54% win rate. That deck as a whole with a 0.34 cube rate over 1,600 games.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect to say that Anti-Venom would be doing good. I don't, what is it? I don't know what his, let me pull up his actual stats here, but
They're not
in
great.
general, I feel like, yeah, Anti-Venom, he's not doing badly, actually. He's again, 0.01 in terms of positive cube rate. 48.4% in terms of his win rate when played, and then a 7.8% in terms of total popularity. I don't know. When I'm looking at the card, I didn't expect to say that it was even doing anything really great there. But I do think the Anti-Venom is a card that, especially with Freyja next week,
Yeah.
I really think that Pixie list might be one of the best places for Anti-Venom.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best ones. I know I've also seen that a lot of Tribunals being used with Anti-Venom because you can actually use Howard and get some potential value there.
Yep.
And I like that logic. I think that's another good place for it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would say this is a good card. I know you've been saying that, but it's definitely, I will say at the very least it's playable.
Yes.
And that's the very minimum I'm saying there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be probably getting better as time goes on, but I think for the time being, it's very much still up in the air whether or not I think it's good.
It's like the Wiccan and Ajax kind of situation where it's like these cards on launch weren't the best cards ever. They were okay for what they do, and then progressively, depending on the state of the meta, they got better themselves. Which, of course, this isn't the exact same ability as like Wiccan or like Ajax, but you see them in some of the similar shells actually, and like they all have 7 power. I guess Ajax, of course, can have more power, but there's just a bunch of opportunity for this to find the right home. And that list by zombies does feel really solid. But if you were to rank all 7 cards that came out this season, you can do you want to do a 1 to 7 or like a top 5? What are you thinking?
How about we trade off going with our least favorite? Like we go least favorite to favorite. We just say. All right. I think my least favorite this season. Is it? I guess it's just gonna have to be Agony. I think it's just Agony here.
I think we can agree that Agony is just our least favorite.
Yeah, Agony I think was my least favorite, and then I go next one. I'm gonna say I don't know if you're gonna agree with that. I think I'm gonna say Scream.
Scream. Okay.
Scream's my number 6.
I played Scream the least, but I think I would have Misery as my second least favorite.
That's fair. Okay. I would have Anti-Venom as my number 5.
Okay, you have Anti-Venom number 5. I'll have Scream at number 5.
And then number 4 is where I think I'll put. Is number 4 Misery? I think it's not. I don't know if I want Scorn or Misery at number 4. I'm not gonna lie to you. What do you have number 4 at?
I have Toxin at number 4.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which is me not saying this is a bad card. This is all just personal preference. Just we
Yeah.
want to say this. All these rankings right now are personal preference, not in like this is a horrible card kind of thing. Unless you're talking about Agony, but that's a.
I'm gonna say number 3 and 4. I'm putting Misery and Scorn at tied. I honestly like both of them, but I think they're both. I like both of them, but I think they're both bad or like narrow in different ways. I don't know what that means. Like the Misery not being a great card in comparison to Scorn's extreme narrowness really makes me question which one I like more than the other. So I'm gonna say 3 and 4. I think they're both gonna exist in that spot.
Okay, I think that's fair. I'm gonna put Anti-Venom at my 3 spot.
That's fair, and I'm gonna put Agent at 2 for me.
Agent's my 2 as well. I think I'm cool with that.
And then so your favorite?
My favorite's gonna be Scorn.
And I'll go Toxin for my favorite here because I think,
There you go.
I mean, to be fair, right? I think this is similar to what we said when we were going into this season.
Yep.
I'm not honestly the most surprised by any of these rankings here. But I liked it. I don't know. What do y'all think? What were your favorite cards this season? What were your least favorite cards this season? You should let us know in the comments down below. Guess what? There are comments on Spotify, maybe Apple Music as well. I don't even know about that or podcasts, but we read all of them.
And then, yeah, I think totally let us know. And we're going to move on to our next segment over here where we're going to be talking about some of these tech cards. It's gonna be probably a shorter segment, maybe. Who knows? You know, we yap for however long it happens. And,
yap?
and then we'll go over to
You yapping, bro?
the next season.
Are you canonically yapping?
I am canonically yapping for real.
Man's canonically yapping. For
100.
real, no cap on God?
On God, 100%.
On OP, all right.
No skibbity.
No skibbity? You touch it. Oh my God, man's trying to look Max and Morgan out here. No cap. Bro, you trying to glaze me right now? Is that what's going on?
What in the world is happening? I need to make sure I have the same. Am I on the same statistics as you?
Maybe. I patch and top 50.
Oh, this is class 30. See you guys. I'm already messing up. And we're gonna go off of the patch. And this is off popularity, yeah.
So before we even say this stuff, one of the things we talked about here, what is a tech card definitively? I think I have an idea for what a tech card's definition is, but I'd like to hear from you. What is your definition of a tech card?
So a tech card to me is a card that is flexible, and its main purpose is to counter either a group of cards or something flexible enough to buff an entire group of your own cards, like a deck in that sort of sense. It's not necessarily a single archetype defining card, but it is something that impacts potentially your side of the board and your opponent's side of the board, and it's like a Swiss Army knife, kind of flexible.
Yeah, I think I define a tech card as a card that you use to counter something your opponent is doing, whether it be by an individual card, an archetype, or whatever, like something your opponent can or is currently doing in general. So I think, if we're going to look at that, Shadow King is a great example of that, because it could affect your side, could affect your opponent's side, but Shadow King resets all cards to their base power. So I think Shadow King is currently the best tech card in the game. I think we normally see Shang-Chi in that slot.
Yes, normally, and Shang-Chi's been up to 40% popularity sometimes. This percentage on the right over here is popularity, win-loss, and average cubes throughout the course of all play rate. And it is whenever this card is played on the board.
Yeah. And again, I also think tech cards can be used to potentially rug pull a game at some point. So I think you get a lot of value from them. But I think, Shadow King, I think, is currently the best tech card right now.
Yep.
And I think Shang-Chi might take his spot next season. I don't know.
Shadow King will also be good against Surtur, something to keep in mind. To just reset him back. But like Shang-Chi definitely will be way more popular with people playing all the big cards.
I'm going to disagree with that because Surtur has a floor of 5 power.
But like 3/5
it is going to reset.
But...
It's good, but it's different than when like Athena gets reset by Shadow King.
Yeah. So
I think it's still going to be good when that happens, but I don't think it's going to be good enough. If that I don't think it's going to be.
And I wasn't saying it's better than Chi. I'm just saying like it'll be used with Chi.
No, you were saying it's better than Chi. I'm sorry, I disagree with you right there. You've obviously
you guys can fact check it. So.
No, I'm sorry, I'm joking. No, I definitely think that So I think Shang-Chi is another very good tech card, and then you've got next few. I think when we're looking at this, I argue Cosmo, Eliath, and Killmonger are all tech cards.
I would say they are. I agree.
Yeah, and I think. For at least just we're looking at the top few, I think those are the best tech cards right now. There are other ones that we scroll down through because I think we can see some more with I think Luke Cage is probably going to go in there. I think Luke Cage is a good tech card. What is it? Rogue I think is the next one that we get, and it's not for a bit here.
Rogue is tech card, I would say.
Yeah, and then I think maybe Magneto and Legion, I think, and then we kind of I don't know. Like at that point, I feel like we're already kind of reaching.
Yeah, at that point, we have U.S. Agent.
I'd say
Red
it's just
Guardian,
U.S. Agent. Yeah, Red Guardian's in there as well.
Juggernaut.
Like Juggernaut's another good example of a tech card here. Yeah, so there are a lot of cards that could be tech cards. Enchantress, another one. And when we're looking at least the best tech cards right now, what's the role you think a tech card should take? Like in the meta, I'm gonna say.
I think there's always a use for tech cards, and tech cards should always be prevalent in the meta, because if you don't get tech cards, like you can't have a way to stop things. Things just run rampant if there's not a way to counter them. And I do also think like some of these cards are going to get more and more and more value. Specifically, Red Guardian, with him being in spotlights this next week, is going to be used a lot. Because he's also super flexible. He's in the 3 slot. Surfer's just going to be running crazy again, I think. But I think they're very useful. I think what they do in the meta is needed. And I don't really have a tech card at the moment that I think needs a huge change, I don't think. Maybe the Shadow King Luke Cage interaction we could talk about. But other than that, I think they're kind of in a good spot.
Yeah, I don't even know if I hate it that much. I'm kind of... So, I mean, how Shadow King used to work is that... and how he does work is, so basically whenever you look at a card, whenever some effect is changing it, it shows you when you tap the card, it has a modifier. It's gotten +1 from Mirror Island. It's got a -2 from Red Guardian, something like that. And what Shadow King used to do with the old Luke Cage interaction was only remove all of the negative modifiers there. Yes. But now he just removes all modifiers, no matter what, and it can't be stopped by Luke Cage. I don't hate it still. I know people maybe don't like that, but I think I'm okay with that being a thing. Whether or not they need to make that clearer inside of the game is a different conversation, I think. But I think I'm okay with it existing just at like where that is a world that we have to live in, where we're just gonna say, okay, Shadow King counters Luke Cage potentially, and you can't stop it there. You have to stop it with maybe a Cosmo, because I feel like Luke Cage is a great card, and I don't want Luke Cage to be too good.
Yeah,
I think we don't want like a single lane version. We don't want him to be like overpowered, but I definitely think as he currently stands, he is a great card in Marvel Snap, and I think he can live with being countered by Shadow King.
Yes.
I think that's a fine place for the meta to exist. But I don't know, I feel like in general, I think I disagree with the logic you said with tech cards, where I don't want them to be good inside of all decks. I like it where you have certain decks that you want to put tech cards in.
Okay.
Or certain decks that some tech cards are better in than others. Like the fact that some of the best lists have been able to just run like technically double Cosmo is not fun to me because of Mystique. Like that's kind of a double tech card there, and that Cosmo working there is fine in that deck. And if that deck isn't the best deck, I don't mind it, but I don't think it should be the best one. Then if you're talking about even like, which say Juggernaut's another good card there. The Scream deck in general has a lot of tech cards because the whole tech is moving your cards away.
Yeah.
And that can work. Gambit again is kind of a tech card because it destroys your opponent's card, but it still works with your own style deck. So a lot of the ways that we currently have the meta working a lot of those best decks, quote unquote, I really do like less tech cards and more just versatility in the cards you're doing. And so if it's cards that, you know, are moving your cards away, it's because the deck is built to move your cards away. If it's a deck that has the potential for double Cosmo, it's because you have a lot of potentially really good ongoing abilities that you would like to copy multiple times. One of the ones I'm not a fan of, and it's this deck, I don't know if you've seen going around, it's where it's got Invisible Woman, Shadow King, Killmonger, Rogue, Red Guardian, US Agent, like all those cards in the same deck. It's got Gwenpool and stuff in there too. That's a deck that I don't like as much. It feels just kind of like Sarah Control of older times, and I don't...
Miracle Monkey.
I don't like... Yeah. I don't like the Sarah Control style of decks where it feels like it's just a bunch of tech cards and then that's it, and the plan is to win pretty much with tech cards and then maybe Hitmonkey. Those types of decks I prefer less of, I think.
And I think that's fair. I think like what happens, especially right now, there's so much Airsham running around. You just want to have an answer for them always having the answer for you. But like if you run into a non-Airsham matchup, you kind of just like steamroll people because you have an answer to all of their simple, more like predictable outcomes opposed to like the Airsham outcome.
Yeah.
So I can totally see, like, I've had instances where I'm like, why are they playing this? This is just like the fun police. You're literally like, I am having so much fun right now, so I'm going to ruin the fun for everyone else as well. And
destroy players playing Shang-Chi make me angry to no end. I get it's a good tech card. It's not good for the deck, and you're shooting yourself in the foot. And yes, it has times where it works against me, and maybe those times give you the win. I refuse to acknowledge that, though, because I still do not like it feels like as if I'm putting a Shadow King in that deck. Something else where it feels like I'm going to take away from what I'm doing in the game just to kick someone else's sandcastle and ruin their fun times. Like, we're in a game where we said Mobius was going to be everywhere this week.
Yeah.
I've seen Mobius in like 1 or 2 decks. And I love that. If Mobius is a prevalent card, that sucks. If a tech card is prevalent, it really sucks. So the decks where the tech cards are narrow and being used very specifically are very cool to me. I think those are the ones that I really enjoy. I love being able to be like, okay, I think this deck is like, we're going to be seeing a lot, I think, of over this next probably month, a lot of armor.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be a cool tech card. Like, armor's a tech card, I think. Because it can, the amount of times I see them put down an X-23 in a lane. They have priority, I snap, they put down a Wolverine same lane, and then my armor reveals, and then they retreat. Because that's the deck I'm building, and it makes sense there, but it's a good counter for them as well. And so it's another great use of a tech card. But I think it's also telling if I'm not mistaken, doesn't the best move deck right now, it uses Cosmo and Goliath?
Yes, it does. It fights for priority, and then it like alters other combos with the Cosmo.
Yeah. I'm glad that move is being used more, but I don't like the fact that like that's the way it has to be used.
Yeah.
Like, there's talk about bounce. The best bounce decks I think are using Shadow King. So I don't know whether or not I think it's okay or not, whether or not I like it one way or another. In general, tech cards being specific, tech cards being more specific deck focused, I like. What is it? I mean, if y'all don't know, Tucker and I, we did this thing a bit ago called we did an Airshim Anarchy. Before Airshim came out, we did this big tournament, and one of the things we talked about when we set it up is we wanted to do pre-built decks, and those pre-built decks, we had very few tech cards in. And I would argue that was one of the most fun tournaments I'd ever watched.
100%.
Because I actually would, because you didn't feel like if someone was going to do something, they're just kicking you immediately down. No, they had to use their tech cards very specifically, very focused, because I don't even think we had the same tech. We made a point, I think, to have none of the same tech cards appear twice.
Yeah, no tech cards were repeated at all.
Yeah, we had only one. I think we had 12 different decks, and we had one Shang-Chi, one Shadow King, one like all of that stuff, and it was extremely diverse, and that was a blast for myself to be able to watch, and also be able to see people deal with, because again, it was open deck list. Everyone got to see that stuff, but in general, I liked that idea more, where when a tech card is limited in its use cases, limited in its focus, and it's very direct there. I think that's the best place for tech cards to exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, like, not every single deck is running Mobius. Every single deck is running Shadow King. That's when you know, just, like, everyone's trying to counter everyone. The meta is just really streamlined and not really just all over the place and, like, flexible, which I like when the meta is flexible. I like when Destroy is relevant in the meta. I like when Discard's relevant in the meta. Like, all of these, like, older decks are relevant, meaning that anyone can play them, anyone has the opportunity, and you can have, I mean, and like the state of Snap right now is like sometimes you just have a horrible matchup. That's just simple as is. You just match up with someone who has the deck that counters your deck. That's just Snap. Sometimes it happens. There's definitely instances where you can beat that deck. There's instances where you just get absolutely bodied. But like at the end of the day, you have to draw the cards. And I think I'm very excited for this next season when it comes to a lot of these cards too, because it feels like they're going to be a bunch of new cards. There's a new iteration of kind of tech. We have some like activate kind of tech cards.
Yeah.
Which is going to be really cool. And of course, starting off the new season, it's not going to be Gore, but the first card we have is Surtur, which is going to be the brand new season pass card. How do we feel about Surtur so far? This also is not the. I don't think this is updated stats. I think he's actually a 3.5. This is just all these animated. We're gonna have, by the way, which not all of them are animated, are with their older stats. But we wanted to show off some freaking cool variants. So
yeah, there's some cool variants coming out this season. But I think Surtur's gonna be a really fun card. And again, he's a 3/5 that says after you play a card with plus 10 power, this gains plus 3 power. And I think Surtur is gonna be insane. I don't see a world where Surtur is not a good card. Right? Like I think it's just gonna be a great card. I can't imagine that this card is going to flop. I can't imagine this card is gonna be bad. My biggest issue I will take with this card is that it's narrow in its application.
Yes.
Because I feel like you're Scar and that's it.
Yeah, you're just playing big dumb idiots, and like if you don't have Scar, don't worry, you can still play a bunch of other 10 powered cards. Scar, of course, is going to get you the most value. I think there's a world where you could flex this into some Black Knight, maybe, which that'll be fun, which we'll probably, of course, test some of that for sure. But yeah, I think it's very
I want to see the 14th Black Knight video. I'm sorry, 14th, 15th.
And but like, I want you guys to know, like, a 10 powered card has to be played for Surtur to work. It doesn't work if a card becomes 10 power on that turn. It has to have that 10 power when it is played onto the board.
So it would be, so first word, like Black Panther would work, right?
I think so, because the honor reveal would stage itself before.
Because it does say after you play a card, right?
Yeah.
So then it would probably work with ongoing cards then, right, as well, I think? With like a, what is it, with like a Devil Dino or something? I think it should.
I would think so. I want to do testing with it. Because like if the Black Panther also situation does work, there is a potential that Venom could work because the honor reveal goes off beforehand. So like there's going to be testing. If it's not, like if Dance is right and it is the works of the Black Panther and it can work with Venom, you can make this card a little bit more flexible, just a little bit. If not, you're just playing big dumb idiots. You're playing your Cold Obsidian. You're playing your Tuma, your Crossbones, your new and improved Typhoid Mary, big stonks. And then you're chilling. There's going to be a lot of Cassandra Nova. There's going to be a lot of, like, maybe not Scorpion, but watch out for a lot of Valkyrie, a lot of Shadow King. Like, there's going to be a lot of Affliction stuff going on, which is going to offset, of course, probably more Scar value, because as long as you're throwing this on the board with 10 power, Surtur's going to get power, but it's going to be a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so it's not an ongoing thing, right? So as long as the card is on the board and Surtur has to be on the board as well, which is another big feature, because again, is this going to be similar to Scream, where if you don't get Scream by turn 2, it's a lot worse? Is this going to be similar to Scream, where if you don't have Surtur on the board by turn 3, it's kind of a dead card? Is that how this is going to be working as well?
I think there's definitely an opportunity for it to be a dead card. I think if like you're playing Zabu and stuff, you do get a little bit extra value with Surtur there. Or because if you get your 10 power cards out early and maybe you do draw Surtur late, you can play like still a Surtur and a Scar, and then Surtur becomes a 3/8. It's not going to get the maximum like cap for the most part, but even like you said, like at a 3/5, it's still just decent stats to have on the board. But of course, drawing this late game is going to be probably one of the main cons of this card.
Yeah, and also one of the nice things about this card as well is that at a 3/5, that if you play 2 10 drops, if you've got Scar in hand as well, that's now a 3/11, which triggers for Scar. So now you can play Scar and still 6 power worth of cards on the board.
Yep.
And one of the things I'm expecting for people to do is everyone to say like, oh, it's not going to matter. Scarf's not going to matter because Mobius is going to go around everywhere. Y'all, Mobius didn't appear last week. I don't think he's going to make a large appearance this week either. I don't think he's going to be this prevalent card. The biggest thing is I think Scar is now potentially going to be one of the most wanted cards if people don't have that.
Yeah, Scar, especially with the season pass now, is going to be super wanted.
Yeah.
I would say there's potential still for Mobius stuff, but it really depends on what happens with this next card, like what people are doing with Frigga. I think that's really going to determine like if they're doing stuff with Anti-Venom or if they are maybe doing some Pixie things. You might see Mobius in the Pixie stuff, like as just because it's an auto-slotted card. But I don't necessarily know if a lot of people are going to be running Mobius for counters unless they are doing like the Sarah control kind of thing.
And that's so so Frigga is also coming out today. But Frigga is a 3/3, not a 0/0. Again, we're just showing it because cool animations, and the animations had that at the time. On reveal, add a copy of the last card you played to your hand if able. Now, this is okay. I love you ranting. I'm gonna rant about this. When I saw the words "if able" on this card, I was very upset because it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't understand why in the world "if able" was here. And people were like, "Oh, it's because if your hand is full, it wouldn't go in there." Then no, that's dumb. That's not on. It's not on Moon Girl. That's not on Agent Coulson. That's not on Nick Fury. It's never been on a card. So stop saying it. It's wrong. Do you know why if able's on this card, Tucker?
Yeah, I think I told you why if able is on this card.
Did you tell me? Were you the one who told me this?
I'm the one who told you this, and then you're
like,
like,
tell
no,
everyone
this
else,
isn't. You said this isn't on this card. What are you talking about? And
yeah, you tell everyone else what this was. Yeah, go ahead.
So the if able is just pertaining if the card's still on the board. That's the if able. That the text is if able, but it could have been if card is on the board. Like they could have made it a little bit more just specific.
So that was why I was upset with this, because if able did not exist. And when Tucker told me that, he's like, well, that's because if it's on the board. I'm like, well, no, we have that pre-existing word, and we have Absorbing Man, we have Mystique, and neither one of those say it's able. You would think, right? Tucker, would you like to know what happened on October? What happened on October 14th of this month?
What happened on October 14th of this last month?
We had an OTA, Tucker. And the changes that we had reported to us, I say reported to us. Let's just go ahead and check what those were. Yep. So I will tell you, Mystique and Absorbing Man were in none of those changes. We did not have any changes reported to Mystique or Absorbing Man. Why would those cards be changed? That doesn't make any sense, Dance. I agree with you. But the cards that were changed were those two. And they used to say, if the last card, let's say with Mystique, she said, if the last card you played has an ongoing copy, it's text. If it's in play. It doesn't say if it's in play anymore. It says if able, which is a very specific, different wording.
Yep.
Although this was actually during the patch, not the OTAs when this stuff changed. And again, not noted, which is that's what annoys me, by the way. But so when you told me this stuff, I was very shocked. I was bewildered. But so the logic behind this card is the card still has to be on the board. You can't destroy it and then bring it back. The card has to exist for Frigga to be able to bring a copy of it back to your hand, which is different in comparison to, let's say to Nico, where Nico doesn't care if the card gets destroyed or whatever afterwards. She just always copies it back into your hand.
Yes.
This is meant to be a lot more similar to Mystique and Absorb Man in that it just brings the other card that previously was played back to your hand. That was my rant on this card. Sorry.
No, and I think it's very applicable to like the wording and everything for us all to understand it better. And I think like this card itself, you see it in the dev update, like you're playing this potentially with hammers to get those back. I think this card you can play in that list, but I think it's going to be a move bounce card. I think you're going to get a lot of value there. I think like with your Human Torch, potentially dagger stuff, and be able to play more of those, move it all around. It's going to be crazy. A Sage, like getting those stuff duplicated. I don't know necessarily about normal bounce. You probably could use it in normal bounce. But it's going to be probably a card people test with a lot. So I'm very interested to see like how people test with this card. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I was talking to some other people about this, and my logic of where you want to use this card, I don't think it's with the hammers really. But I think my logic of where you want to use the card is you want to use the card if you have a cost reduction for the previous card you played. So either I think a Pixie anti-Venom list that we've seen already going around. I think Frigga could slot in there pretty nicely, potentially even in the copycat slot is where I was thinking. Or some way that the card has a power increase, and so you want to get even more value on the card itself. Yeah. So maybe a card that has been played to Krakoa, or that's been buffed by Krakoa, you use that with Frigga, maybe there. Or again, just a good ability in general. I mean, let's say again, Copycat had stolen an Iron Man. Yeah. You can use Frigga to get another one of those cards. So that's my logic of where you're going to want to be using this card. And I do, and we talked about earlier, that, what is it? I think you said Zombies deck. I think is going to be one of the best places for this card. And that's what's really interesting to me, because I think actually I think anti-venom stonks are going to go up, and I think pixie stonks, I think there's just going to be a lot of reasons to be using Frigga there, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I feel like a lot of people are going to push to Infinite with Surtur, but this card is the one that I want to try to push with because I think it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more different and very interesting, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, I think this card's going to be very fun. I think it's, like you said, it's got a bunch of different ways you can play it, and it's going to be just cool to see what shells people, put this card into. Whereas this card right here, Malekith, is a 4/6. We're showing his stats on screen right now because his animation does not have stats, but it is an on reveal at a 1, 2, or 3 cost card from your deck here. It reveals at the end of the game. What are you thinking about Malekith?
I like this card. I don't know if you are liking this one as well. I haven't talked with you about these cards at all, very purposely. I think Malekith is going to be a great card. I think, as I know you were a fan of old America Chavez, this feels like it's going to do some similar deck thinning. Now, the counterpoint to that is you can only deck thin on turn 3 if you've Zabu'd, or turn 4. But I think the deck thinning aspect of this card is going to be very good in general. And I know there's been questions about whether or not you can look at this card that Malekith is going to play. If you can't look at this card should not be released. If you can't look at the card that Malekith brings out, he sucks, and I don't think anyone should get him. Honestly, I think it will be one of the worst cards released in the past few months, and that's even worse than Symbiote Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And Scarlet Spider. It just won't be good. You can look at your cards that are played through through Supergiant, through Invisible Woman, through Dark Dimension, through what's the location that just stops cards from revealing until next turn?
Lemura.
All of those locations, yeah. You can look at the card that is of yours, that's on your side of the board.
Yeah. If
you can't look at the card that Malekith brings out, that's one of the biggest L's I've ever seen in my life.
No,
I don't know.
And I totally agree. But I think this card is going to be good. And I think the deck thinning aspect, like, the difference is you know what is in your deck, so you know what the options are. And then especially getting to combo it that way. Okay, Malekith drew this, so I'm going to go this route with these next couple of plays.
Yeah.
Like, it's really solid. I think the Spotlight Week is actually pretty interesting for it as well.
I think so, yeah.
But because if you don't have Thena or if you don't have Valentina, which are also in a couple of different decks right now.
True, yeah.
So, but no, I think this card, like you said, I like deck thinning. We all like deck thinning. Being able to draw your cards a little bit more consistently sounds pretty good. It is capital C, by the way, so it is going to go off of base cost instead of concurrent cost. So it's not going to be like, oh, I got this with Pixie, so it's going to get a really cool new card. It's going to be always off of
Honestly, actually, I like using a Pixie, because what if your Pixie's now got a really big cost on it?
That's true.
Or whatever the card is that Pixie would be bringing out would have a big cost on it. Yeah. Also, I heard people saying that, like, it just doesn't give you value at a 4/6. It's not a 4/6.
Yep.
I think let's argue a 1 cost. Just a 1 cost is brought out. It's a 4/8.
Yep.
Typically, like the average power of a 1 cost card is 2 power. 2 plus 6 equals 8.
Yep.
Crazy math, I know. But that means that it's a 4/8, and that's just talking about a 1 cost. You can get a 2 or a 3 cost as well. Imagine having a Sage that you pull out until the final turn. I think this is a great card. I do not see a world where this is a card that is not good.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. I think the comboing aspect, I think you play this in Ajax. You get like your combo out later, like still like
I love that.
This is gonna be good. Like, even if you get a Mystique, like, that sets up the last card you play to be an ongoing, and Mystique copies it. Like,
all of this is saying, of course, you can look at the card, because I stand by it. If you can't look at the card that Malekith brings out, I will be shocked at Second Dinner. I don't think I've been disappointed with them in a hot bit. I will be truly and utterly disappointed with Second Dinner as a company if you cannot look at the card that this brings out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, like, if that is also the case, like, you're just really hoping you have your untapped tracker so you can kind of guess what it is potentially, but still.
I don't care about this card then.
And then it's also Eliath bait too, because someone's gonna be like,
that's
oh.
a different thing I really like.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what is it? I've been playing in some Supergiant decks now because Supergiant came into the Spotlight caches this week.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of times I see my opponent play Supergiant, I'm like, okay, this card has the same stats. I don't need its ability. You put it on the board. And then they Supergiant my Apocalypse because I played Corvus Live a couple turns ago, and so it's actually, I've got the extra energy. Oh no, what's my Apocalypse gonna do without its ability? God, oh wait.
Mm-hmm.
It's so dang good. I love it.
Yes, it is a good, like, we talk about, like, unknowns, and, like, that is what you want when it comes to the 4, 5, and 6 slot cards, is something that can swing the game. And this is something that can swing the game. We talked about with Anti-Venom. Whatever Anti-Venom draws on the next turn could make or break the rest of the game. It could be a snap condition. It could be a retreat condition. If you look at Iron Lad hitting a good card could be a make or break because you're trying to reach and hit a different combo in your deck. You look at Moon Girl. You're using this to get duplications of cards to help you win the game. I think like at the 4 slot, this actually still does make a lot of sense. And it's almost never a 4/6 like you're saying too. There's just always value. If of course you've drawn all of your low end, then of course this has no value. But
guess what? You can know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what cards you put in your deck.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah. So, but
yeah, I don't know. I love that.
I'm pretty.
This also could have been
card.
a thing where it said it was like the lowest cost card left in your deck.
Yeah.
And I think it would have. Maybe that's if it actually needs a buff. Maybe that's it. But I don't even think it needs that. Like I just think this is a good card. It gives you a bunch of value, and I like it. Now, is it better than the next card, though?
So, you do have to do a little less work for Malekith than Fenris. Like Fenris, you have to destroy or discard an enemy's card beforehand.
Yeah, do you want to tell everyone? Wait, just make sure everyone knows his ability real quick.
So, Fenris Wolf is a 2/3. Activate. Resurrect the highest power discarded or destroyed enemy card to your side of this location. I saw this, and one of my first thoughts was, if you are facing a Hela deck, and you resurrect one of their big cards, they probably can't resurrect that card anymore on their side of the board, right?
No, I don't believe they can. I think in the same way that when you look at your graveyard in Marvel Snap, if you Phoenix Force back a destroyed card, that does not show up in the graveyard anymore. It leaves the graveyard. I think it's what they've called the graveyard. That's why it's resurrected. It comes out of the graveyard. And I think in the same way, again, Hela's, whenever it shows the list of cards that Hela has discarded up until that point, whenever Hela triggers, all the cards that were discarded no longer show up in that area. So again, that you're removing that pool potentially for them. Not to mention, if we're going to talk about it again, I want to talk about Misery here. That Misery, the Misery like mill deck that's been going around a little bit?
Yep.
That's going to be wild with Fenris.
Yeah, mill with Fenris is something that when we watched the dev video, Drewski was talking about it. And I said, wait, Drewski, hold up. Yeah, that's going to cook. And you guys know, like, we love mill around here. Even though it is super toxic, we know. It is going to be crazy with this card because you're playing so many different ways to destroy cards. And if you can get like a late game Yondu to go off, it's normally going to hit like a bigger one of their cards, maybe even a combo defining card. And then you yoink it back with Fenris. Like,
yeah. Like, and also what is it? It's a 2-cost card. So I think we'll probably rank all these again at the end of the end of this bit, but Fenris is pretty dang high on that list because you play him on curve and you choose when his ability goes back off, and that's the biggest value. And we're finally, again, let's not even forget the fact that this is another activate card that we haven't seen we didn't see a new one all last month.
Yep.
We got another activate now. And I think Fenris is going to do some fun things. I do not know if he's going to be a good card. No, actually, no. I think he's going to be a great card. No, what am I saying? I think he's going to be great. Honestly, I was trying to go against myself for a second, but no, I just think I can't imagine Fenris not being a good card.
Yeah, I think he's at least good. I think like I don't know if he's like necessarily broken because you still do have to activate it, and it is still you can get Red Guardian in it. It can be Lady Deathstrike, and if you don't have priority, if your opponent does offset what you're trying to do or destroy Fenris before you priority, Fenris doesn't go off. So we got to keep that in mind with activate. But if you look at like the 2-slot, Black Swan still gets a lot of value. This, of course, you have to have enablers to make it happen. Black Swan, I'm thinking like with like at the 2-slot, she has that late game value that helps like slam and stuff. Not like she's like amazing and like Black Swan's like S tier, but like we're looking at like just comparable like 2 costs or in the 2-slot. I think this, of course, is better than Black Swan probably because the power you can output just it's dependent on your matchup. But I'm very excited just to see how this activate works opposed to maybe this next activate card.
Yeah, so this next card that we have is going to be coming out during Deadpool's Diner, going to be starting on the 21st of this month. King Eitri, I believe is how you say his name.
Yes.
A 1/2 that activate, draw a card that didn't start in your deck. What are you thinking about King Eitri?
So, what's cool about King Eitri is we have seen King Eitri in the MCU. Peter Dinklage plays him in Infinity War, where Thor gets the new Mjolnir.
We've seen all these cards in the MCU, haven't we?
I think,
right?
all
Frigga,
of them.
Yeah, Frigga we've seen. Malekith was the Venom the villain of Thor 2. Fenris was a henchman of Hela in Thor 3, and then Gore was the best part of Thor 4.
Yes.
Yeah, which Gore is the final card coming out this month, but we're not talking about him yet.
But no, I think like this card's gonna be okay. I think it's it's like niche. I think you can play him in Thanos, sure. I think you're probably seeing him more in like an Asgardian, like hammer kind of deck because, it just makes sense if it's the profile, which kind of enables you to play more like Beta Ray Bill actually in the Asgard package now with like Lockjaw stuff. Lockjaw gets more value, which is going to be really cool. Like you can draw your hammers and then you can Jane after they get played into Lockjaw again. So like you have a bunch of different options there. I think it's a little bit more niche, but I'm glad we're having the opportunity to get a quote unquote like free card. You just have to play up to it in the diner, and they're making the diner better, is what they're saying. So we're gonna hold them to that.
Yeah, we don't have all the details there though.
Yeah. So, but we don't know the details, but we're gonna if they're gonna make it better, well, we're make it better.
I'm excited for it to be better. I liked the last one honestly. I think the biggest mistake they had there was the initial first bit.
Yeah.
And being able to buy your way the full thing. But if they're fixing those two things, I'm fine with Deadpool's Diner. I think those are my largest issues. I don't know if people had other ones. I don't think we even mentioned them when we talked about game modes previously. But I think in general, though, those are my biggest issues. But yeah, I like the logic of being able to play. What is it? Play your Thor, activate King Eitri, same turn to immediately get the hammer. Then you can play Lockjaw plus the Mjolnir to activate or to pull put the hammer back into your deck. Then you Jane Foster to pull the hammers all out again. And it's just a great cycle that I don't think we've been able to do before, and I really am excited to be able to do that here.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be a good card to have. I really wonder if they're gonna make this Series 5 or Series 4.
Series 4.
Series 4? Okay, good.
It is a Series 4 release. They've said that.
Thank goodness, because if they made this Series 5, I would.
What do you mean? I've said it before. They're just devaluing Series 5, so everyone stops putting all the pressure on Series 5 cards.
And then they just bring out Series 6, and they all cost $10K.
Now, in general, I think this was a fine card, but I think the best card potentially, or at least a very fun card, Gore the God Butcher. Now, I don't want to talk about the data mine version because guess what? That card doesn't exist. Stop complaining about that. I don't think anyone knows anymore. But still, ongoing with a 6-cost -1 base power, ongoing ability, +2 power for each on-reveal card in play.
Yeah.
This is going to be a blast.
This
is going to be fun.
One of those cards. So, like, we told you guys to get Toxin. Everyone told you guys to get Toxin. But I will say with confidence, this is one of those cards that I don't think we've all been on the same page about. Maybe since either Alioth or High Evo. I mean, I guess Blob people were on the same page. Erisham people were, but I think
Erisham was probably the last one that everyone was saying, get this card.
Yeah, and
Here's the question.
Yeah.
Is it this one or Fenris Wolf?
Of the two,
Mm-hmm.
I think I would still go Gore then Fenris.
Interesting. Okay.
I think it's close, but I think
Mhm.
Gore's value immediately, like, to enable Gore, you just need to kind of not be playing against a Tribunal deck.
Yeah. That's fair.
Like, that's the main thing. Of course, you have to have a lot of ongoings. Your opponent has to, not ongoings, on reveals. But,
Mhm.
like, even if they play 4 different on reveals on their side of the board and you play 3, Gore gets 14 power just like that. So it's a 6,
True.
13, which is pretty good. And, like, I think that what you're going to be playing this a lot in is just going to be Mr. Negative. So, like, the negative value is really good.
No, I think this is going to be a fun place. I think this is going to be a negative build that we haven't really seen in a bit.
Yeah.
I think I was talking to you about this a little bit, where I think you push hard into the on reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe the only ongoing cards you're really going to have here are like Ravonna and I was going to think Null. Maybe you have Wong, maybe it's Mystique there too.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like you have a lot less ongoing cards and you can try to combo a lot more with, you got your Sages, you've got your Black Panthers, you've got your Zolas, you got your Ironhearts. You're just trying to get the value off of those cards as best as you can.
Yeah, no.
Honestly, could even be a world that you want to even use Frigga too.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god. Frigga also duplicating. I think if it's not just a Gore, Frigga just duplicating a 0/5 Iron Man is
True.
Just
oh my
really
gosh.
solid.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping this is going to unlock a new version of Mr. Negative because I feel like Mr. Negative has felt, I don't even think he's felt stale, but it's felt very much like figured out. I think it's a good way to put it.
Yes, it's predictable because if you draw Jane and they play Jane, you retreat.
Yeah.
You retreat.
Please respect the Jane. Respect the Jane. Respect the Jane. I mean, Jane's going to be another good card in that deck, right?
Yeah.
But, and we talked about it before, I actually really love the way that this works because every single Asgardian card has an on-reveal ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very specific thus far. So, and that's also including the hammers. So
Yep.
you've got your, what is it? You've got Frigga, Jane, your Thor, your Beta Ray Bill, your Odin, and the hammers. I don't know. You're playing against that deck with Gore, and that's just an easy. I don't know. That's I believe putting him to 13 power. Which, by the way, I want to point out. I love the fact actually that he's a -1, and I don't think it's because he's broken.
Mm-mm.
I think it's because if your opponent plays 5 on reveal cards, which I think is a very standard number
Mm-hmm.
of on reveal cards, which I don't know if we've actually really counted that before, but I love that still. But if they play 5 cards, that makes this just a 9 power card, and that can't be Shang-Chi'd.
Yeah, and I think the negative power might be lore based too, based on the sword, how it kind of like twists his mind and stuff. But like,
is it the same thing as the Ebony Blade? Is there different? Is it like
so Ebony Blade is different than this over here. So like this
is one of them like Null sword?
This is Null's. This is Null's sword. This is how he killed the Sentinel, or not Sentinel, the Celestial that is nowhere.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, in general, think this card is going to be just another really fun card, and I'm down for it. My biggest issue about all the cards this month, again, if we're going to talk about the previous one, King Eitri, no variants there, by the way. I don't know if we mentioned that. No
just
variants
like
of King
Agony,
Eitri.
it just feels bad. Even if like there's spotlight variants, at least like there's a potential for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Gore also has a bunch because he's been data mined for a while.
Yeah.
But in general, none of them feels weird to me. But
yeah, he also got buffed from the last time too. He was a -3 at one point. And they're like, play testing, let's make him -1.
Yeah, because I feel like at one point it's maybe be a detriment because it was so good.
Yeah.
But now it's a -1 in terms of, I actually think the fact that it is a -1 for him is a buff much more than a detriment.
Yes.
And again, negative on this, it isn't going to be a -1 cost. Sorry. You're not going to gain value from it by playing it. It is just going to be a 0 costed card with 6 power base. So,
because when negative swaps, Mr. Negative, like if he were to swap, he goes to a 0/4, right?
Yep. Correct.
Okay.
But talking about these, we've got some pretty fun cards this month. What's your rating? Let's go with the one you're least excited for first. I'm gonna push this on you for the start here rather than me.
King Eitri.
King Eitri?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just this is just not whether or not you think it's gonna be good or not. This is just your own personal, same thing that we did before.
Yes. King Eitri
Okay.
I have as my lowest.
Ugh. God, I feel no. I'm gonna say Frigga. I think Frigga's mine.
Frigga's my second.
Okay, yeah, Frigga could be. That's a fair one for second. I still don't have King Eitri yet, though. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna do a little tailspin. I got Surtur.
Okay.
I don't think he's exciting. I don't think he's good. I'm not gonna say he's not good, but maybe he's gonna be a favorite after I get value from him. But I just am not excited by him. Again, 3-5, not 3-3. But yeah, I don't know.
What's my third too? I have him around the same.
All right, yeah. And okay, and then my next one. I think this one is where King Eitri goes for me.
Okay.
So we got the same bottom three. Just different order there. But what's taking your bronze?
I'm gonna go Fenris actually at bronze.
Fenris bronze. Yeah, I agree with that actually. Fenris Wolf is a good bronze choice, I think, because again, I like him. I don't know if he's gonna be good or not. It's gonna be fun to mess with.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to provide as much excitement for me as will my favorite. Which, let's say what's your favorite? We can skip past number 2. We'll figure that out by context clues. What's your favorite card between? Then the last two are Gore and Malekith.
So I think overall value-wise, you can get a more consistent guarantee. I might go Malekith, actually, my number 1. I answered it differently for Power Round, but I think I'm going to go Malekith.
That's fun. Okay, I did not expect it for a Malekith to be the favorite. Yeah, okay. So then your number 2 is Gore, right? Yeah, I'm inversed, I think. I think I still like Gore as my favorite. I think Gore's going to be a really fun card. I'm excited by him. I love the usefulness of it. I love being able to mess with the on reveals. I like the way that's going to work here. But that's, again, nothing against Malekith. I think Malekith is going to be good. I think I'm just not as excited about it, though. I think it's going to be a good card. And I think I'm not going to think as crazy about it because it just isn't doing... It's just pulling a card from my deck, which they're being careful about. Yeah. So it's a good card. I like the deck thinning. I just don't think it's my favorite.
I think that's fair, and I think you play a lot more negative than I do as well. So I think you
that's
also
fair.
like Gore in that sense too. And I think this card is going to be a great card. I think it's a very, very close 1A, 1B kind of situation for the Malekith and Gore, and I'm excited because, like, even if you played, like, this is weird, okay, but, like, even if your opponent had goblins on their side of the board and, like, a hood potentially on their side of the board, that's 3 on-reveal cards that also give Gore value. I know that's a random example, but, like, it does work. Like,
yeah, no, I think it's going to still work. I think you have to use more on-reveals for him.
Oh, yes.
Random thought I just thought about as well, by the way. Is Frigga going to be good in Cerebra 3? I don't know if anyone's talked about that yet.
You could use her in Cerebro 3, get some extra Cerebros, extra Chi. Like, you can get another Valkyrie. I mean, maybe if you're playing some magic stuff, like, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, another Shadow King is interesting. Like, there's a lot. I think there's... I don't know. I don't know. Sorry, I just thought about that. It's a random one as we're wrapping up here. I just thought about that, and I was wondering if that's going to be a good place for it as well. But yeah, I will say, to bring us all back to today, today's one with Frigga, you also have Copycat and Red Guardian. If you don't got one of those cards, I'd say if you have the 4 keys for it, spend this week. I think this is going to be a really good week in general. I think it gives you a lot of value, like Tucker said earlier. If there are 2 Series 5 cards inside of there, especially if there are 3 cards that you just don't have right now in your collection, those are good weeks to go for. Please don't spend keys though unless you have 4 Spotlight tickets or Spotlight keys, because the amount of times that's gone wrong. You don't need to spend your keys if you don't need to. Just if you really want the card, you spend tokens. Otherwise, just wait.
Yep.
I don't think any of these cards are going to be needed in Marvel Snap, and I think that's cool. And I think it's just going to be a general thing of these are going to be good cards. If you don't have them, there are other decks you can play still.
Yep. No, I
or
agree.
Even replacements.
They're tech cards. They can fit anywhere.
True.
But yeah, do you have any other closing remarks for the homies?
The only thing is I'll say, speaking of homies, my homie Tucker, I don't know if y'all have heard of him. He's a really cool up-and-coming content creator on Marvel Snap. He's been doing a lot of stuff recently. He's been trying to get their attention, and he is someone you should definitely be subscribed to. If you're watching this video, fun fact, you're on Tucker's YouTube channel. So go ahead, it's right below the video. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, comment down below. What are your thoughts on our What are your thoughts on our ranking for Venom season, for this season? How you think tech guards should be in general? Let him know, and I'll be reading as well in the comments down below. Also follow him over on Twitch, on Twitter, on Blue Sky. Everyone makes those, but no, not Blue Sky. Don't follow him on Blue Sky. Everyone makes them. I've seen people make Blue Sky accounts, but no one posts on them.
Nope.
They are like, all right, guys, moving to Blue Sky. 3 days later, here's my latest split in Marvel Snap, and they post that on Twitter instead of anywhere else. So,
goodness gracious.
Sorry, but yeah, that's a pretty fun thing at least.
But before you guys do any of that, please stop what you're doing right now. You see this absolutely handsome man right beside me? That is Not My Dance. If you guys are not following Not My Dance on any other platforms, you guys need to stop what you're doing right now. If you're doing a little business, you need to stop your business, and you need to hit those follow buttons on Not My Dance on Twitter, on Twitch, on the YouTubes as well. Hit the homie up. Definitely follow him on all those platforms. You guys will not be disappointed at all whatsoever. We need to have a huge congrats. If we can get some congratulations down in the comments below. Dance has also made it into the Marvel Snap Creator Program. We are super proud of him. Really happy to see him in the program. Huge congrats to you, King. But yeah, you guys have an absolutely incredible season. You guys are all going to hit Infinite. Every single person who watches this video, if you like the video, you actually get extra good luck as well to get a guaranteed spot at Infinite. But until next time, you guys have a good one. God bless, and laters.